Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll introduce you to NCBA's new Chief Executive Officer and hear his vision for the organization. Plus, a look at fake meat, the threat it poses to the beef industry, and how NCBA is fighting back.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. After a long and thorough search process, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association has named the organization's next Chief Executive Officer. And joining us now is the new CEO, Colin Woodall. Colin, thanks so much for joining us and congratulations.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here with you, and I'm really looking forward to the challenge of being the next CEO of NCBA.
For folks who have watched our show, they've seen you obviously before, but let's go back a moment and just share a little bit about your personal background.
Well, I've been with NCBA for about 15 years now, and most people recognize me as the chief lobbyist, and we've had a lot of fights and a lot of good wins over the years. But before that, I worked for a U.S. Senator from Texas, got the opportunity to see how Capitol Hill works. Before I came to Washington, D.C., spent some time out in western Kansas managing grain elevators for Cargill, and had a great opportunity trading the feedlot markets, especially in the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. I'm a Texas native. I grew up participating in 4-H. I'm an Eagle Scout and graduated from Texas A&M University.
And we won't hold that against you.
I appreciate that.
I'm just kidding. No, seriously, you mentioned the wins you've had in Washington, D.C., and many connect you as being a person who has really led that effort over the last several years. But folks can be confident that things are in good hands in D.C., even with you coming to Denver. Talk a little bit about the team that we have in place back there.
Well, that's the great part about this transition is it's not just about me. It's about the association as a whole. And what we've been able to do is not only move me up to CEO, but also bring in Ethan Lane to be the Vice President of Government Affairs. Many of your watchers will recognize Ethan's name. They've seen him on the show before, and they know that he has been the Executive Director of our Public Lands Council. But Ethan and the entire team in Washington, D.C. are seasoned veterans. They've been through multiple farm bills, multiple trade deals. They have really been able to distinguish themselves as players in Washington, D.C., and more importantly, to be able to deliver on all the policy priorities of this association.
I'm sure this is a question you've gotten by many journalists, but I have to ask you, what's your vision for NCBA moving forward?
I have received that question quite a bit, but it's not about my vision. It's about the vision of the association. And the vision of this association is pretty strong. We want to be the leaders, the trusted leaders, and the definitive voice of this association. Those are pretty strong words, and it allows us to move forward and implement that. And when you step back a little bit and think about how we become that trusted leader and that definitive voice, it's through things such as the Beef Long Range Plan, through our policy priorities, through all of the decisions that have been made by our members to set us in the right direction. It's my job as CEO to make sure that we execute and deliver on all of those. So as you really look at this, it's not about just Colin Woodall's vision. This is about the vision of the association and the industry as a whole.
Yeah, that's helpful clarification, unlike maybe that of a corporate CEO that is expected perhaps to have his own vision. You are enforcing and executing against the vision of a very grassroots-driven organization. Fair enough?
And that's what gives us all of our strength and our powers, because we are a grassroots association. It's not about the CEO's vision. It's about all of the decisions made by the members of this association who show up to our meetings, who vote on policies, and who ultimately support us in achieving those policies.
But you still are an organization's voice, and you use that voice pretty firmly in several of your first days as a leader. I think you penned an op-ed called Smear Campaign. Tell us a little bit about what prompted you to write that article and what you hope it'll accomplish.
The officers and the members of the association have been very clear. They want NCBA to be the leader. They want us out there fighting for this association, fighting for its members, and pushing back. And that's exactly what we did with the Smear Campaign piece. The Organization for Competitive Markets, OCM, is a group that claims to represent cattle producers. But what we have found is they're actually just a puppet group for the Humane Society of the United States, HSUS. Their executive director, Joe Maxwell, has worked for HSUS and been an operative of theirs. Their communications director has worked for HSUS. So when you see OCM, you're seeing HSUS and vice versa. And it was time that we called them out, because what they said is that we were granting ourselves checkoff dollars. Well, they failed to realize the entire process of how this works, Kevin. And it's the Beef Promotion Operating Committee, made up of cattle producers, some who are NCBA members, some who are not, that ultimately make the decision of who gets to be a contractor. And we are one of 8 contractors, and in fact, we didn't even get all the money that we had asked for. So it's important to put things in perspective and to call out when misinformation is put out there in the airwaves, like OCM did.
Colin, you mentioned earlier that NCBA had a couple of big wins, and certainly chief among those was the repeal of WOTUS. Why was that so important to the industry, and how did NCBA work to make that happen?
Waters of the United States was nothing more than a government land grab. This was EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers telling cattle producers how they can and cannot use their land. As you can imagine, that's a slap in our face and a slap to private property rights. So this is something we've been working on for well over a decade, and it really formalized itself in what became the 2015 Obama WOTUS rule. We knew that we had to take this burden off of cattle producers. So we worked very hard as an association, both with the members of Congress and also with the Trump administration, to make them very clear that this was unacceptable, that we had to take these restrictions off of cattle producers. And fortunately, President Trump agreed with us. And so we've been able to work with the EPA to not only repeal the WOTUS rule, which just happened, but also talk about what's next in terms of water regulation, because water regulation is extremely important. We have to have clean water in order to have cattle operations. We just need to make sure we do it without taking our private property rights away.
Exactly. Another key achievement that many of us applauded was the recent bilateral between the United States and Japan, something that we were hoping for since we pulled out of TPP. Why is that so important to the beef industry?
It's important because what it does is it puts us on a level playing field with all of our competitors, including Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, those who are trying to beat us in that Japanese market. And they were doing a pretty good job here in 2019 because their tariffs were lower. Basically, their tax was lower. And anytime you have a lower tax, you have the ability to sell more product, and we saw that. We needed to be able to get back on that level playing field, have the same tax across the board. That's what this deal did. And we know that anytime we're on a level playing field, we will always win on taste.
Absolutely. Very confident of that. Thank you for your perspective on this, and I'm going to keep you here because we have a few more questions to ask you about a couple of other issues. But first, as Colin just said, the trade deal between the U.S. and Japan is a huge win for the beef industry. Although Japan has long been our leading trade partner, Dan Hallstrom, President and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation, says there's real opportunity for additional growth in the Japanese market.
The basic situation with Japan is that it's a very wealthy culture, the largest savings rate in the world, and they're able to pay for quality. And this is really the in that we have, is that with our high quality grain-fed beef, tasty beef, and it's not the cheapest beef, nor do we want it to be the cheapest beef, there's a large segment that can afford it and demand it in Japan. And we're seeing a Niku boom, a meat boom, going on in Japan. In all segments, traditional retail, regional retail, food service, all the different concepts within food service. It's just absolutely booming. And we are taking a share over the years from Australia, but there's a lot more we could take. We're still not back to our pre-BSE levels on market share versus Australia. So it used to be 2/3 US, 1/3 Australia. It's flipped. We're now closer to 50-50, but we used to be 70% of the markets. There's some growth here that is untapped, and we're looking forward to exploring that further.
Now, the best way to stay up to date on trade and market issues is by becoming a member of NCBA. It's easy to do. Just call 1-866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll explain how NCBA is working to protect the industry and consumers from fake meat and misleading labels. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When the field is your office, you never get tired of going to work. Cut, rake, bale, repeat. New Holland offers the power and versatility to get through the day. From small squares to large squares and everything in between, New Holland has you covered. Visit your local dealer today to find out more.
Out here, you know what needs to be done, and you know what it means to those you're doing it for. But every sunrise brings something new. With the weather, the soil, the markets, your machinery. You can't always predict what it will be. So it's good to know that Ram trucks are more than capable of helping you get it done right.
Fake meat is a real concern for the beef industry and an issue we need to be watching very closely. We asked some cattle industry leaders to share their thoughts on this subject.
Number one, we have to talk about the plant-based meat, the stuff that's already on the market. We've had plant-based burgers for many years, but this recently they're really getting a lot of, I call it halo effect from the mainstream media. They're pulling sustainability and they're making sustainability claims. So we're working hard to push back and say, you know, beef is sustainable. And it's a whole lot cleaner label than an Impossible Burger, which has maybe 22 to 26 ingredients, and we have one, beef.
We're all about consumers having a choice. We want to make that clear. We think if they're given that choice and given correct information, truthful information, they're going to choose American beef more often than not. But at the same time, we do want to make sure, like with any other food product, that the fake meat type material, subject to the same inspections, same health considerations, the same safety considerations, the same regulatory scheme that we are, and most particularly having the right inspection program, at the same time having the right labeling. Honest, accurate labeling is what we're all about.
We've had some good success with USDA and FDA in terms of how the product is going to be administered, how it's going to be supervised. You know, part of the fake meat, that's bigger than just a soy-based or something like that. It also has to do with lab-based meats or cell-based technology. So there's a lot of things coming up there, and your policy can't just be based on the soybean-related products. It's got to be related to all facets of fake meat. And as long as the public identifies it as fake meat, maybe we've done our job.
Let's talk more about the topic of fake meat. Here once again is NCBA CEO Colin Woodall, and also we're joined by Minnesota Cattleman Don Schiefelbein, who also serves as NCBA's Policy Division Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and spending some time talking about this important topic. I want to begin with some level setting, right? I hear a lot about terminology, alternative protein, plant-based protein, lab meat, fake meat. Set the record straight, Colin, and give us some definition around these products that are trying to steal beef's market share.
Kevin, there's a lot of alternative proteins out there. Beans are an alternative protein that would love to steal some of our market share. But when you look at what NCBA is doing right now, we're looking at two different classes. The first one is going to be those products that are plant-based, things such as the Impossible Burger and the Impossible Whopper right now, and also Beyond Beef and the Beyond Ground product that we see. That is out in the grocery store shelves today. You can get it today, and we're trying to make sure that producers and consumers both know exactly what that product is. But we also have the cell-based or lab-grown beef, where they are taking cells from bovines and trying to replicate our product. Now, none of that has made it to the retail chain yet, but it is something that is definitely in development, and those are the two areas we're looking at, the cell-grown product and the plant-based product. The two things are definitely trying to compete with us.
And Donnie, tell us, why is fake meat such a concern for beef producers?
Well, I guess you don't have to look any further than look at the two CEOs and the statements they're making about what they want to do, and they're clearly on record saying they want to eliminate animal protein. You know, if that isn't a threat, I don't know what a threat is, right? And so I think it's very important that we stay focused on making sure we're defending our product and making sure the consumers clearly understand what it is they're purchasing when they're purchasing these fake meat products.
So as Policy Division Chair, did you have something to add?
Yeah. Key component of that is just also the realization that these companies are marketing off of our backs. Yeah. They're not talking about why their product is great, they're talking about why our product is bad. Yeah. And so disparaging us in the marketplace is not acceptable. And on top of that, they want to use the term beef, also unacceptable to us.
Right, and I guess at one level, imitation is the best form of flattery, but to your point, they are disparaging, using disparaging comments as their key differentiator.
And we've developed this reputation of beef for many, many centuries, right?
Sure.
And as far as we're concerned, beef is beef and there is no alternative.
So as Policy Division Chair, Don, how long has NCBA been working on this issue, and what prompted the organization to take action in the first place?
Well, like all policy, all of our policies begin at the grassroots level. So it initiates through producers saying, hey, there's a need here. It percolates up through the chain through our affiliates. The state affiliates bring forward the policy to our national organization, and we decide whether or not we're going to vote up or down on the policy. And of course, this one was obviously one that was key, and we decided we're going to move forward with this policy. So it's been a 2-year process, but it was identified early, and I think fortunately, relative to some other agriculture organizations like dairy, who didn't act it promptly, we're out in front of the game today.
Being very proactive.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let me clarify one thing. Is NCBA opposed to alternative proteins?
We want a fair playing field is what we want. Okay. We never think anyone wins by taking choices away from the consumer. I think that's an important point to make. And I think what we really want to make sure is that people understand what fake meat really is, what the ingredients are, and make sure that when they're purchasing that kind of product, they know precisely what they're buying, because we believe in a level playing field, beef wins.
Yeah, I agree. And Colin, you had mentioned there are several of these products already on the market. I just saw one advertised on Sunday when we went out. What is your expectation relative to the growth in market share that these products might be taking, and what's going to drive that?
No doubt that there's a lot of attention given to these products right now. You can't watch football without seeing an Impossible Whopper commercial on TV. Yeah. And of course, every time one of those comes up, we draw up a little bit, as you can imagine. Yeah. But we also have to keep in mind that there's still not a whole lot of acceptance of this product. Great example, I was in my local Safeway about 2 weeks ago, and there was the Beyond Beef ground product that was in the meat case next to ground beef. And it was still fully stocked and had all the markdown stickers on it. So we're still seeing that the consumer's not 100% on board, but we can't let that cause us not to act. We have to make sure that we keep the pressure on and ensure that they are being accurate in their marketing, and more importantly, do everything we can to protect that term beef, because as Don said, that's ours.
You're right. Absolutely. And you both talked about the disparaging comments. Don, are you concerned about how they're positioning the health and wellness benefits of these alternative products?
Yeah, I think they're misleading the consumer by devoid, by not telling them fully what it is. When you start to look at the product, and you have health professionals look at the product, they're quick to point out if you're buying this product for healthfulness, you're probably not making a good choice. You can just take a glance, Kevin, through the list of what's in these things. Okay. And I mean, it's like expeller pressed canola oil, methacellulose.
Oh, sure, that sounds good.
Maltodextrin. And I mean, it sounds like more Frankenfood than it does anything else, right? And I think it becomes important that we get that message out so people clearly see what they're buying. Yeah. And I think if those kind of product names sound a little familiar to you, do you know what? A lot of these same ingredients are in your regular dog food that you purchase. Wow. So, I think we just got to be clear on what they're buying and make sure they understand what they're buying.
Do you all find it interesting that the same set of consumers who were concerned about, GMOs and even processing the food are now embracing this? Is that odd to you, Colin, or not?
It is odd. It is something that we've asked in Washington, D.C. among the policymakers. Yeah. How can you not support GMOs, but all of a sudden think that this ultra-processed product is going to be the savior for the environment? Right. It does not add up.
And you mentioned the environment. I see a lot of articles referencing climate change, environment, animal welfare as being the primary reason that even if you like meat, traditional beef, you should try these alternative proteins. What do you say to that?
We have a lot of hungry mouths in the world today, and there are more to come. But we have less and less arable land. And of the arable land that we have, not all of it is suited to corn or broccoli or carrots. We have a lot of rangeland that our animals can graze on. We can help with carbon sequestration. We can take that food stuff that is of no use to us as humans, and we can turn that into high quality beef, which people love here in the United States and they love around the world. That is truly a superpower. And I think telling that story and making sure that people see it in the context is going to be very important for us to maintain the high ground here and try to debunk a lot of the myths that Impossible and Beyond continue to perpetuate.
And I think the reality is, Kevin, that when you look at the health benefits of beef and the reality that's coming around, that beef truly is a very good. So yeah, for everything, they've just turned directions, and their goal is not necessarily healthfulness, et cetera. They just want to eliminate
beef production.
Exactly. And I think now they're taking aim through the environment.
Well, and when you alluded to it, when you have the CEO of Whole Foods saying things like, don't eat this for health benefits. I mean, don't think you're being more healthy by eating Impossible Burger, or Beyond Beef. I think that says a lot, don't you?
I think when consumers really understand what they're eating, what the ingredient list looks like, we win very quickly on healthfulness.
I don't know about your cows, but my cows eat plants, so I guess we're the original plant-based protein,
That's
right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Still to come, we'll talk more about how NCBA is fighting to ensure that fake meat is properly regulated by the federal government. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for outstanding genetics that will work for you, then make plans now to be at the 2019 CK Cattle Headquarters Sale on October 25th in Hope Hull, Alabama. CK Cattle is a 3-generation operation offering the best in Angus, Key Angus, and Sim Angus bulls and females, backed by a family that cares about their customers.
The customer is the most important thing in our operation. You know, the CK guarantee is pretty simple. I mean, we live by the golden rule. We want to treat you like you want to be treated. If you have a problem with your bull, we're going to back them.
Don't miss their 2019 sale offering more than 110 2-year-old bulls and 90 females, including 10 tiger-striped F1 Brayford heifers. It all happens Friday, October 25th. Learn more at the website ckcattle.com.
Welcome back. We're talking about the topic of fake meat with NCBA CEO Colin Woodall and Minnesota Cattlemen and Policy Division Chair Don Schiefelbein. Colin, what steps has NCBA taken on the issue of fake meat, and what was the response among lawmakers relative to those steps?
Well, we have found that several members of Congress are very sympathetic to what we're trying to do here, and we utilize that sympathy to work very hard to make sure that there was a regulatory regime in place for the cell-grown product. When we initially passed our policy, we went back to Washington, D.C. and asked FDA, are you regulating the cell-grown product? And they said, no, go talk to USDA. We went and talked to USDA, and they said, well, you should talk to FDA. So we realized pretty quickly nothing was going on. So what we pushed for was to make sure that there was a regulatory structure in place, and we achieved that. Matter of fact, this went all the way to the White House and grabbed the attention of the president. So we do have a regulatory structure that's in place now that gives FDA the opportunity to determine whether or not this product can even come out into the marketplace. And if it does, then USDA will have the day-to-day inspection jurisdiction, just like they do in our plants. And we thought that that was very important.
And why is it important for USDA to have that role relative to labeling versus FDA?
Well, extremely important, because by having the final say on what that label says, we will prevent that from saying clean meat, which is something that a lot of these companies would love to see, but USDA is not going to allow that. So I think it's going to really help us make sure that the consumer knows exactly what it is they're getting.
And Don, what more can we expect from NCBA relative to the fake meat issue?
Well, we're going to continue to spread the word on clearly what fake meat is. We're going to try to arm all of our membership and get the word out through Twitter, through Facebook, by any means we can, to make sure when a consumer goes to the supermarket, they clearly understand the product they're buying and know exactly what the benefits and strengths are of beef.
And what would you tell our viewers in terms of how producers can help?
Well, you know, as you hear some of these are issues that are going to be really important to our long-term viability. You know, if you're a family farmer and you expect to pass this farm on, if we don't win this issue, it impacts all of us. So I think it's important that everybody do their part, and whether it's becoming involved in NCBA or becoming a member, you know, become a dues-paying member, so when the fight is going on in Washington, D.C., and it all takes money to run that deal, you're helping pave the future for your children and grandchildren.
Absolutely. And, you know, I believe that frankly, this issue is a great example of an issue that I alone, as a producer, can't do anything about. We need an organization like NCBA to be representing our interest on this very threatening issue.
But more importantly, it's about making sure that we as an association know what issues of importance are to producers. Good. Because again, we wouldn't be working on this if it wasn't for NCBA's members stepping up, identifying that threat and passing the policy and then turning us loose to go fight for it.
Gentlemen, thanks for coming today. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to stay up to date on all the key issues and events from DC, one way is by becoming a member of NCBA. Members get the Beltway Beef newsletter. It's a weekly update straight from Washington that gives valuable insights on the key policy initiatives that may impact your business. To join, just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. Still to come, we'll tell you how the beef checkoff is working to educate consumers about the many benefits of choosing beef. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It started with a man, a plot of land, and a few head of cattle. That man, your great-grandfather. You've got his name and his legacy, too. It's what you fight to live up to and work to leave behind. With innovation, integrity, and passion that runs as deep as yours, we'll be there. For your operation, for your future, for you. This is why Merck Animal Health works.
At Case IH, we believe it's our job to provide you with solutions. That's why our Farmall and Maxim tractors, as well as our tools and attachments, are designed with you in mind. From mowing to baling to loading and more, we're here to help turn your to-dos into to-dones. At Case IH, we'll keep your days running smoothly with equipment that's durable, versatile, and highly efficient. No wonder farmers are more loyal to Case IH than any other brand. Visit your local dealer or go to caseih.com/livestock for more.
We've been talking about the issue of fake meat and why it's such an important topic to beef producers. Here to shed a little more light on the subject is Elisa Harrison. She's Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Research for NCBA, and Susan Salario. She's Senior Executive Director of Brand Marketing and Communications. So I guess I would ask you to begin with, why do you think we're seeing so much interest and attention on this fake meat?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one, we have some new companies out in the marketplace that have introduced some new products that they say replicates beef's great taste and the touch and the feel of it. Some of the chemical formulations that they put together, they think more replicates a true beef patty. Okay. Also have seen some companies who are going for an IPO and they're out there putting a significant amount of marketing dollars into getting some publicity. And then you couple that with a lot of the issues that we're talking about as a country, particularly climate change. We see some companies out there that are trying to promote these products as being more sustainable than beef, and obviously that's not true, but I think that all of that combined is creating a tremendous amount of attention on some of these new products that are out there today.
You know, I'm assuming that most of the people watching our show are probably not big consumers of those products, but you have your finger on the pulse of consumer trends every day. How is the average consumer responding or accepting these products?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you can still see that there's still the same number of meat eaters today than there were a year ago before these products started going in there. Overwhelmingly, 94 to 95% of consumers in the U.S. eat animal protein. Okay. And the numbers who say they're vegans or vegetarians is really very low, between 3 and 5%. But what we are seeing is that consumers are curious. They're trying some of these products. But our research is showing is that they may be trying it, but they're still eating the same amount of beef, chicken, pork, and other, fish and that sort of thing. So the key takeaway there is that they're not replacing beef, they're not replacing chicken, they're just trying it out, just any other new consumer product that would come on there. And when you look at the millennials, it's about the same. They might be trying it, but they're still eating about the same amount of beef, chicken, and pork as the rest of the consumers are.
And so what kind of research has NCBA as a contractor to the Beef Checkoff done in the area of alternative protein?
The research area that NCBA conducts, both in consumer research as well as technical research, is pretty extensive, and it really is the foundation of all of our consumer marketing programs, all of our, our issues management and media relations program. Okay. So we do a tremendous amount of consumer research and market intelligence research. What's going on in the marketplace in food service and retail? But we also spend a tremendous tremendous amount of time and resources on nutritional research and sustainability research. And so those, and product quality. So we want to make, beef is higher quality today than it ever has been. We're producing more beef with fewer animals than ever before. And the protein, the nutritional value of the protein that you get in beef is very high. All of that is backed up by sound science that the Beef Checkoff has paid for and is conducted by NCBA. So we take all of that and put it into a melting pot of sort to try to come up with the best programs to talk to the consumer about a variety of issues.
And those are great messages. I guess, Susan, I would ask you, tell us a little bit about some of the work you've done in addressing these products as part of your Beef Checkoff work.
We've been doing it in a really smart and fun and edgy way that really fits with the Beef It's What's for Dinner brand. So when we relaunched the Beef It's What's for Dinner brand about 2 years ago, we came up with a creative platform that is nicely done beef. So for example, today we have a series of different ads, display ads for example, that are placed on social media and digital websites that say, nicely done beef, you've proven that meat substitutes are just that, substitutes. These have been seen by millions of people around the country. We even place these on point of purchase on Instacart, which is an online grocery shopping platform, hoping that we would inspire more beef purchases and maybe fewer of these other meat substitute purchases. In addition to that, we've got a series of videos that are playing, and when a consumer right now Googles for something like Beyond Beef Burger, for example, they could get served up an advertisement from Beef It's What's for Dinner that then directs them back to beefitswhatsfordinner.com to see a real beef recipe. So since we started those Google search advertisements in June, we've had more than 75,000 impressions of those ads, in addition to the millions of impressions that we've had through other digital and social platforms.
That's great, and I love the whole nicely done beef. That is edgy and it's cute and it's memorable. That's outstanding. Tell me this, from a retail and food service standpoint, what are you doing to educate those audiences about alternative protein as they compare to beef?
Yeah, we've had a very heavy focus on our retail and food service partners. As you mentioned, obviously they're the ones that are selling these alternative proteins to consumers, but as Elisa mentioned, they're still selling a tremendous amount of beef. So what we really want to do is make sure that they realize that beef is still their most valuable protein from a sales perspective, from a sustainability perspective, and from a sustenance perspective. So just in August, actually, we did a webinar for business decision makers, retailer and food service companies around the country. We had more than 350 business decision makers join. They heard from 2 experts, both on NCBA's checkoff division as well as NCBA's policy division. So a great opportunity to really utilize the subject matter expertise that NCBA has as a contractor and not as a contractor. And then we also blanketed the media environment for those business decision maker publications, Winsight Grocery Business, Shelby Report, and made sure that an infographic that we had created that showed the sustainability, the sales, as well as the nutritional perspective was out there amongst those business decision makers.
Outstanding. Well, I'm very impressed by the proactive efforts you're taking against this new entrant in the marketplace.
I think it's also important to note that not only with the nicely done work that we're doing specifically on meat alternatives, our overall goal as a contractor to the Beef Checkoff at NCBA is to make beef the #1 protein. There are so many choices today for consumers, from beef all the way down to cricket powder. And so we have a lot more competition today. So everything we do ladders up to make beef the #1 protein, and that's including against some of these new meat alternatives that we're seeing in the marketplace.
And one last question. Can you tell us what you have in store in terms of consumer marketing efforts, especially as it relates to this alternative meat next year?
We are so excited with the direction of Beef It's What's for Dinner. Coming up in October, we're actually launching for the first time an entire series focused around beef quality assurance and bringing BQA to consumers for the first time ever. This is a follow-up to the success of our Rethink the Ranch series that we released 2 years ago that showcases the hard work of farmers and ranchers around the country. This is showcasing people that are BQA certified across the country for the first time to consumers. So we'll be running a new series of videos on our YouTube channel, on social and digital media, and for the first time, we're placing those videos on connected television platforms like Hulu. So as a consumer is streaming some of their favorite TV shows, they might see one of our Beef It's What's for Dinner ads. And then as we head into the holidays, we're also very excited. We have a special treat in store. I am sure, Kevin, you and your family watch the Yule log as you're opening holiday gifts. Well, this year for you, we have the beef drool log, which shows a prime rib roast slowly roasting over an open flame for 2.5 hours. So we're encouraging people to slow down and savor the holidays with beef this year.
You can bet your bottom dollar we will have one of those prime ribs in our oven on Christmas. Thank you both for being here and for all you do to encourage consumers to choose beef.
Thank you.
Now, don't forget, you can check out the Beef It's What's for Dinner website for a great interactive experience. You'll find things like recipes, information on beef cuts, and nutritional information at this one-stop shop for all things beef. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll introduce you to an operation in Florida that's leaving the land in better shape for future generations. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Case IH Maxim series featuring our new Active Drive 8 dual clutch transmission is the ultimate multitasker. The new Active Drive 8 transmission has 24 speeds and features 8 power shift speeds in 3 electronically shifted ranges to give you more working speeds without torque interruption. The Maxim series tractors are loaded with productivity-enhancing innovations. With the Active Clutch 2 feature, you can slow or stop the tractor just by depressing both brake pedals without using the clutch pedal. Memory Shuttle remembers the last gear you used in each direction and then automatically shifts you to that gear whenever you change directions. Smooth Shift technology reduces driveline shock and increases operator comfort by adjusting engine RPMs while shifting under load. The advanced loader joystick lets you shift through all 24 gears without taking your hand off the loader control. Put these productivity and cost savings features to work. Visit your Case IH dealer today or schedule a test drive at caseih.com/minute.
The Environmental Stewardship Award Program recognizes the nation's best cattle and livestock operations for their outstanding stewardship practices and conservation achievements. These regional winners are dedicated to maintaining and improving their lands for future generations. Let's take a look at the Region 2 award recipient from Florida.
On Blackbeard's Ranch, Brian Jones and his cowboy crew are working to beat the heat of the day by moving cows and calves just after sunrise. The 4,500-acre ranch was purchased by Galinsky Enterprises in 2014 and is managed by Florida cattleman Jim Strickland.
My family has been in Florida for 6 generations. We've always been in the cattle business. The cattle here on the ranch consist of cattle that we have kept for generations, that we've adapted to this environment for generations. And the cattle herds, we have a Brangus cattle herd, we have a Beefmaster cattle herd, and then we have a crossbred cattle herd that are mixtures of Brangus, Beefmaster, and Brayford.
Today in Southwest Florida, houses are going in where cows were once grazing. That makes Blackbeard's Ranch highly valuable as open space.
We are right outside of the second fastest growing planned residential development in the United States. So we have a unique opportunity to tell people about ranch lands, about water, about what us ranchers do for Florida.
We're under a lot of pressure around the state for people to develop, and Jim just caught on fire, if you will, in the last 5 to 6 years promoting conservation, and actually has formed a group of ranchers called the Florida Conservation Group, and they're all like-minded ranchers who are very interested in preserving as much country as possible, but keeping it in private hands.
The wetlands of Blackbeard's Ranch play a critical role in protecting water quality downstream. That's one reason why Jim worked with NRCS to put 1/3 of the ranch into a permanent conservation easement.
That's 1,500 acres where Blackbeard sold the development rights. So that area can never be developed. It can't be converted into something more intensive, and that those wetlands will be restored and that native hydrological regime will be restored.
All we're doing is giving up the right to build a house. We're still grazing cattle on it. It's going to be a little wetter than it was, but it fit for us. That easement program fit for us.
Over the past 4 years, the ranch team has worked to thin dense trees and remove invasive plants, using herbicide treatments and prescribed burns to help restore native habitat.
So our burning plan is we burn 50, 60, 100 acres at a time in a mosaic situation. We're trying to help the cattle, we're trying to help the land, but we're also trying to help our wildlife. So our burns are going to look a little different than others, but it's so important to the cattlemen of Florida to have that ability to burn our ranch lands.
So I think what he has done has been a tremendous service to conservation. If we want to protect, Florida's water and wildlife, we have to have a profitable cattle industry here because that's where the wildlife are.
To implement a rotational grazing plan, new fencing has been added and the ranch team has installed water troughs driven by wind and solar power.
There's been time that on this ranch alone we have 31 ponds, all but 2 were dry. We now have 5 windmills and we've put in our first solar wells. So we are continuing to do cost shares to, one, give those cattle some clean, good water, and we can start moving those cattle around, that I don't have to depend on every single pond.
Jim has also diversified, producing a variety of food products, including Blackbeard's Ranch beef, honey, and pork from Mangalitsa hogs raised on ranch pastures. It's all aimed at maximizing income opportunities and getting the story of agriculture and conservation to the public.
And one of the ways to get our word out initially was food. So if you see a Blackbeard product out there, that person or company is wholeheartedly agreeing to tell the story of ranchers in Florida, not just us, but ranchers across Florida doing the same thing we're doing.
Perhaps most impressive is the effort Jim and his team put into setting up the ranch as a place to regularly host visitors of all ages.
He will defend our industry. He will stand up for it, but he swung the gates open and is passionate about sharing the conservation methods of a Florida ranch with the public.
We host 3 to 5 busloads of people at a time that come out here, and I get the opportunity to tell them what a landscape level conservation on a Florida ranch looks like, feels like, and what it accomplishes.
We really want to tell the story here and show that cattle ranching is critical if we want to protect our native wildlife populations, if we want to protect clean water downstream, because the alternative is development.
Today, Blackbeard's Ranch is a place where cattle are thriving, the land is improving, and critical wildlife habitat is being protected. Jim came up with the name Blackbeard's Ranch in recognition of the pirate history in this area of Florida. But his vision for this land goes far beyond what any pirate could dream.
A lot of people say, well, Jim, are you looking for the silver and the doubloons and the jewels and the sapphires and the rubies that Blackbeard or one of those pirates buried? I said I would love to find it, but the real treasure is the land itself. So we're looking forward to the future here. There's a lot of variables out there. Are we still improving? Every day.
Now, if you'd like to find out more about the Environmental Stewardship Award winners, see photos and videos, or even learn how to nominate someone for the award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. Still ahead, it's time for a visit with our good friend Baxter Black. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Deep in the heart of Texas, that's where the Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show will be in 2020. It's the biggest convention just for cattle producers in San Antonio, a city with an amazing history that's packed with great food and fun. You can't miss it. So make plans now for the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show in San Antonio, February 5th to the 7th. Find out more at ncba.org.
Speaking about funny, Baxter Black has put together a 6-hour, 3-DVD collaboration of nonstop agro humor. Baxter has been entertaining farmers and ranchers from Johnny Carson to Elko, Dolly Parton to Las Vegas, and Ark City to Martin, Tennessee. Treat yourself. It's like being there. 3 DVDs for $25. Call 800-654-2550 or baxterblack.com. Did I say non-educational?
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
One of the most important factors in ranching is the relationship between the cowman and his wife. As the bond grows, he tends to lean on her more and more as the years go by. It's October and they're newlyweds. Honey, the boys and I'll be working cows all day, and it's dangerous and dirty work, especially for a pretty little thing like you. We'll be up at the house at noon, and I'd sure appreciate it if you could fix us some lunch. There's only 5 of us, but if you need help, don't you hesitate to call my mother.
Well, it's April now, and they've been married for 3 years, and they're out at the cabin barn. And he says to her politely, "Emily Jean, you stand behind this barrel here. Sometimes these heifers get feisty after the calve, and once I get her tied down, you can hand me these chains and this bucket of water. But be careful, darling, because it's heavy, and you're already 8.5 months along."
Now it's November. They've been married 10 years and they're going out to feed the cows. Emily, you sure you got that chain hooked on good enough? Let that clutch out easy, and when you feel that tractor start to lug, you drop to a lower gear, because I don't want to throw no bales off the back of this truck. Now you just follow the tracks, and when we get out to the cows, I'll trade you. You can toss the bales and I'll drive. You want to borrow my slicker?
Another September. They're doing a little fall maintenance, and they've been married for 18 years. Em, crawl under here and hold this nut. I'm going up there under the hood and see if I can reach that bolt from up there. Oh, and I hope you're not wearing your good shirt. There's a nasty grease spot down here. Now it's May. 20 years they've been married, and it's Brandon time. He says to her, "Mother, you spray the fly dope and keep the blackleg gun full. I'll rope them. Junior and Jenny, they can flank the big calves. Oh, and don't forget the ear tags, like you did last year."
March, not long ago.
Dang it, I checked the heifers at midnight. It's your turn.
This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. I'm afraid my wife can relate to that story. Now, remember, registration is open for the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. There are a lot of reasons to attend, including the chance to hear some great speakers. For example, former astronaut Scott Kelly will give the keynote address at the opening general session on Wednesday. You'll want to hear the life lessons Captain Kelly has to share about his amazing career. Your convention registration includes admission to this and all the guest speakers. You can get all the details at ncba.org. We're back with more right after this.
When you're in the cattle business, no matter how much it's a business, it still starts with cattle. It's this basic notion that sits at the core of how we approach things at Beringer Ingelheim. We understand when you put the cattle first, it just naturally leads to doing the right things. If you want to do well in this business, you start by doing right. Take care of the cattle, and they'll take care of you.
NCBA works every day to increase profit opportunities for cattle producers, but the organization's success depends on a strong membership base. We asked one industry leader why he's been a long-time NCBA member.
I have always been a big proponent of NCBA because of its Washington presence. The past 5 years, we've actually seen doubling of our Washington, D.C. office. It gives every every member a voice in Washington, D.C. Regardless of where you are, how big, how small you are, you have somebody looking out for you in Washington, D.C. Without NCBA, you do not have. And particularly related to the cattle industry, but also to property rights, endangered species, everything that affects our business. In terms of information, in terms of dealing with the consumer, getting the right information, correcting the wrong information. That's what NCBA does and does very well. But we do need everybody's involvement and help. The more people we have, the more members we have, the better we can do with it.
Now don't forget, there's still plenty of time for you to make plans to join us in San Antonio for the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. You can register and get your housing all set at the website ncba.org. There you'll also find special discounts on things like airfare and rental cars to help you get to, from, and around San Antonio. We're wrapping up this week's show with legacy photos. These are great shots submitted by our viewers of daily life on their own farm and ranch. Let's take a look. Want to see your photo on Cattlemen to Cattlemen? Message them to us on the Cattlemen to Cattlemen Facebook page or email them to c2c@beef.org. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.